A lot of people are going to be using tables for their project, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create a Swing JTable using the window builder and populate the table with data, and also load and save data from the disk and put it into the table. So the first thing I've done is I've installed window builder, and I'm going to create a main window class. So I'll go new and other, scroll down to window builder and swing designer, and since this is my main application window, I'm just going to choose JFrame. Okay, and I need to give it a name, so I'll call this main frame. Okay, now I've got some things underlined, which is probably because I need to if Eclipse will suggest that I add, there we go. Okay, once I add that into my module info, then those underlines disappear. Okay, so here's my source code. I'm just going to get rid of some of these comments, and if I switch to design view, at the moment I've got an empty window. So let's put a table into this window. I'm just going to create an absolute layout, and I'll put a label on there. So if I find a J label, let's pull it up here, and I can say example table. Okay, now your table you want to put inside a scroll pane, because you don't know how big the table is going to be. You're going to want to scroll it up and down if it's too large. So I'll create a scroll pane, and then I'm going to drop that JTable into the scroll pane. So here's JTable, pop it inside the scroll pane. Okay, if I look at the source code now, it should all make sense. There I am creating the panel, and then here is the label which gets shown at the top, here's the scroll pane, and here's the table. Now tables need a table model, and the table model is what provides all of the data that gets shown in the table. Now if you're creating a really complicated program, you probably want to make your own table model, but there is a default table model which does a lot of the standard operations for you, and if you're not going to do anything too complicated, then you can save yourself the effort of making your own table model by using the one built into Java. So let's create a default table model. And I'll need to import that. Okay, now my table's going to need to have some headings. So what can be really useful is if I actually define these headings inside the class. I'm going to go up here and write the headings up the top. Now I'm going to write this as an array of objects rather than an array of strings, and the reason for that is because JTable wants it as an array of objects, and you can't cast an array of object to an array of string directly, so it's easiest to enter object array as the type. So I'll put table headings, okay, and let's have two headings in the table. So I'll have for example name and age. Okay, now putting my headings up here as a constant means that if I need to refer to the headings multiple times, which I normally do, then I don't have to write them out each time, and that means that if I need to add or remove headings, I can just change one place in my program. So this helps to keep the program neat. Now I can provide the headings to table model when I do new table model, then put (0) afterwards. That is saying that I don't want any rows when I first create my table model. and this will create a table model with the headings that I specified. Now I've created that table model, but at the moment the table isn't going to show that data, so I need to tell the table to use that table model, which I do by writing table.setModel, and then I provide the model that I want to use. Okay, so let's create a main class. And in the main class I will just create is it Swing Util? I can never remember what this is. What class is invoke later in? Do I have it in mainframe? I might have it already. Yes, I do. Okay. This has actually created the main method for me. I didn't need to make my own, so I can delete that. Okay, so if I just hit run, okay, and there's my table, and you can see that it's created those columns for me, name and age. So let's try putting a little bit of data into those columns. And again, one of the nice things about default table model, it's really easy. I can just put model.add_row. Now I do new object, so each row is going to be an array of object, and I can just write the things that I want to go in that row inside the array of objects. So let's say that the name is going to be Bob and the age is going to be 27, and if I run that program now, I should have one row in my table. There he is, it's Bob and he's 27. Okay, let's have Mike. $51. Okay, so adding items to each individual row of the table model is pretty easy. Now, you might notice that it is possible to edit items in the table. So for example, I could change Mike into Fred, and that will be updated inside the data model. That behavior can be quite useful. At the same time, there might be times when you don't want to allow it to change change a column of your table model, and you can specify which columns you want to be editable. So the easiest way to do that is after your default table model, we're going to actually derive a class from table model. So you do that by putting an open and close curly bracket instead of a semicolon, and then we're going to write public boolean is cell editable int row int column. Now this is a method which will override the default method in default table model, and you have to return a boolean value here, so it's going to be true or false, and if you return true, then the user is going to be able to edit that cell, and if you return false, then they won't be able to. So if I didn't want the users to be able to edit the name, but I did want them to be able to edit the age, then I could just return true if the column was 0. I could return false if the column was 0, because I don't want them to edit column 0, and return true if the column is 1. So let's try doing that. I'll put return column equals 1, and then try running the program. Okay, so if I double click on name, I can't edit that anymore, but if I double click on age, then I can change the value in there. Let's make Mike Methalusa. Okay, I don't know if that's how you pronounce Methalusa, but that's how I pronounce it in my head. Okay, so we know how to add data to a table, we know how to make it editable. Let's look at loading and saving data. So I'm going to put these into two separate methods. Okay, first of all we'll have save data. So I'll make this void, and we'll pass a file name. Okay, now the first thing you've got to do is convert the data into text. Okay, so there's lots of different ways that you could save data in Java, but But of all of them, I think that the easiest to understand and one of the best to use is JSON. JSON is a data storage format that's very popular now. A big part of its popularity is the fact that it's straightforward. So compared to some of the other ways of storing data which are more powerful, JSON concentrates on just providing something simple which works in most cases. In order to use this, we're going to need to use a JSON library. So this isn't something built into Java, but this is something that you can download from the internet. I'm going to get Firefox, and we'll go off to a website where we can download our JSON library. Now, most Java libraries can be downloaded from a place called Maven Central. So I'll search for Maven Central, Maven Repository Central. Okay, and there's loads and loads of Java packages here. We're just going to download the thing that we need, and in order to read JSON, the best library I think that for straightforward use, simple use, is called JSON. So that's letter G, S-O-N. Okay, so I search for JSON, and then I go into JSON. Okay, now let's get the latest version, so I'll click on the latest version there. And then there's a link for a jar file. So click on the jar file, and you can save that jar file to your local disk. Now I've already done that. It is in my downloads folder. So if I go to downloads, here we are. I've saved that jar file in my downloads. Now once it's in your downloads folder, you need to add it to your project, which you can do by just dragging that jar file over to your source directory and let go, and choose copy files so that it copies that jar into your source directory. Now right click on the jar file, choose build path and add to build path. This means that Java now knows that that jar file, which contains Java code written by Google, is part of your project, and you can use the code that's provided in your own work. Okay, so now that we've got the JSON library, we can use JSON to convert the data in our table into a text string. So let's have a look at how we do that. I put JSON equals new JSON, and this creates a JSON object which can convert data into text. Okay, now I need to receive the table model, so let's just put table model. Okay, so now I can get the data from a table model, and to do that I put model dot get there is a method, can't remember what it's called. Let's just have a look. Oh, it's because it should be called default table model, not just table model. Okay, so now model dot get data vector, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so when I do model dot get data vector, that's going to give me all of the data inside the table. So first of all I put vector data vector equals model dot get data vector. Okay, now don't worry about the yellow underline. There is a reason for that, but we won't worry about that at the moment because we haven't studied generics. A yellow underline is just a warning, it's not an error, so you can ignore that for now. Okay, so now I'm going to convert all of the data in the table into a text string. So I'll put string text data equals JSON dot to JSON and then data vector. Okay, now what this is doing is it's taking all of the data that was read from the table and it's converting it into text. Now just to see what that looks like, let's print it out onto the screen. So I'll put system.out.println text data. Okay, I'll test my routine here. So I'll put save data, a file name, test.json. I'm not actually using that file name yet because I haven't saved anything to disk, but I'll use that file name later on. And then I need to provide the model, and of course that is just called model. So after I've created the table and I've put data in it, I'm then doing this method, save data, and I'm providing a file name, test.json, and I'm providing the table's data model. And in the save data method, it creates a new JSON object which is able to convert data into text. So I get the data out of the table model, I convert it to text using the JSON object, and for now, just to test it, I'm going to print it out on the screen. So let's run that program. And here you see what it prints out on the screen. So it's printed out in square brackets to separate each row, and the items in the row are separated with a comma. But you can see the table data has been converted into text there, and that's really easy, I think, to understand. You could even add more data to your table by just editing the text directly. Okay, so that allows us to convert the table data into text. Now we've got to get that text onto the disk. So let's look at that process. So the first thing I need to do is the file name that's been provided, I need to make that into a path. So I'll put path equals paths.get, and then put the file name. Okay, now a path is just a way of specifying a location on your disk. Okay, so if I provide a file name, in this case the file name is text.json, then it's going to convert that file name into a location on the disk where the file text.json can be stored. Now to write that data to disk, I'm going to put files.writeString. The path is the string that I want to write. The second argument is the text that I want to write, so that is text data, which I got from my JSON. And then the last one is options. I'm just going to leave that out because the default options are fine. Now you'll see that Eclipse underlines that in red, and that's because we're performing an input-output operation, and it could fail, right? So whenever you're reading or writing from disk, there is the possibility that you'll get an error. Maybe the file name is invalid, maybe the disk is full. There's all sorts of things that can happen. So I'm going to hover over that with Eclipse, and it gives me the option to surround with try and catch. Now this is not necessarily the best method of handling it, but for now I'm just going to surround it with try and catch, and if there is an error, I'm just going to print out the error message on the screen, which is what this e.print stack trace means. Proper error handling is more complicated, but at the moment we're not going to worry about that. I don't want to make this much more complicated by looking at error handling, which is all of it a topic in itself. Okay, so if I run this program now, it's going to save that data. Now just to make sure that it saves in exactly the place that I want to, I'm going to put my home folder location here. Okay, now you'll need to put a path which is suitable for your computer. If you're using Windows, then you won't be able to use that path, obviously, and you're going to need to pick a path in your own documents folder or something like that. Okay, so I run the program, and it should now have created in my home folder a text file. If I go to my home folder, and there's the text file, test.json, or is it text.json? It is text.json, not test.json. That was a test I did earlier. Okay, so text.json, if I open that with mousepad, and there is the data which I converted to text earlier on. Now I can even edit that data with a text editor, like I said. So let's just add in an extra row. Okay, I've got Bob, I've got Mike. Let's add in let's have some gender diversity. So I'll put Angie, and Angie can be 43. Okay, so now I've added in a little bit more data. Save it back. Okay, let's see if I can read in that data. So we've got to go the other way now. We've got to have a load data command. So since I don't want to save data anymore, I'm going to just comment that out. Okay, so the double slash there will mean that Java ignores that line. And let's start writing our load data command. Now load data will also need to take a file name. And it will also need to have the table model that it's going to load data into. Okay, so the first step is I've got to read in that data. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, put that on a new line. This will be load data this time. And I need to read in the text file. Now reading in the text file is also very simple as long as you've got an up-to-date version of Java. I should say if you had trouble with this path and files.WriteString, it's probably because you've got an older version of Java, so update your Java so that you get the latest features. It just saves you a little bit of hassle. If you have a very old version of Java, saving a text file was probably at least half a page of work, so the new version makes it much easier. Okay, so to read in this text, I'm going to put string text data equals files.readString, and I need to provide the path. Now the path is exactly the same as I had before, so I'll just convert that file name into a path. And again, it's underlined in red by Eclipse because there could be an error reading it in, so I'm just going to choose the surround with try and catch option. Okay, get rid of that annoying comment. That is not the correct way to handle data, but at the moment we're not going to worry about it. Okay, so this reads in the text data, and let's just try printing out what the text data is. Now, I'll just put a system.out.println in here, text data, and run the program. Okay, and you can see that it has read in my text data, which includes the line that I added manually on the end. Okay, but that text data, although it's been read in, it hasn't been added to the table yet. So that's our final task, is to add that text data to the table. Now the way we do that is that I'm going to use JSON again, so I'll put JSON equals new JSON. And then this time I want to get an object array, so I write object, open and close square brackets, open and close square brackets again. So those two open and close square brackets are making a two-dimensional array, because that's what a table is. It's a two-dimensional array of values. Okay, and this is going to be the table data. Okay, now I'm going to use JSON's from JSON method. Okay, which is going to read in that text and convert it into an array containing all the table data. Now the text I stored in that variable called text data. Okay, so that's the text I read in, and I need to provide that to JSON. Now the second thing I need to provide is the type of data that it's going to produce, and that is just object, open close square brackets, open close square brackets, dot class. Now if you don't understand this part, don't worry. Basically all I'm doing here is I'm saying I want JSON to provide me with an object, two-dimensional object array, and over here I've said this is a two-dimensional object array. So when you're doing this, you need to make sure that this thing here is going to be the same as this thing here. Whatever it is that you're reading in JSON, they need to be the same. So that provides me with the data in my table. Now I need to put that data into the table model, so I put model.setDataVector, and I provide the table data Now when I set the table data, I have a chance to change the column headings again, but in this case I just want to reuse the same column headings I made earlier, so I called that table headings up here. So I'll just put table headings into this space. Okay, so if we run that, we should find now that it's read in the Angie line, which I added by hand. Okay, so all of that data that was on the disk has been read in and populated this table. Okay, so now we've got two different methods, save data and load data. Calling save data will take everything that's currently in your table and save it out to a file on disk. Calling load data is going to read in that file from disk and stick it into your table. And in both cases we're using JSON for data storage. Like I say, JSON is very popular these days, and I personally find its popularity easy to understand because you, as I demonstrated, you can go in and edit the saved files by hand. It's really easy to see what's going on with JSON, and although it's not necessarily the most powerful file format, the ease of use makes up for that in most situations, I think. Okay, so guys, I hope that makes sense, and good luck with your project work.